Well, I think growing up in Zanzibar, which is in a way a concentrated cosmopolitan society.
This series of presentation is part of the Awakening Project.
And at that time, then I joined here. It was government Indian Junior.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to Learning from Our History series of the Awakening Project of the Khoja Shia Ishnashri Muslim community. Awakening Project is a grassroots-led project that looks at challenges facing the community and how the foundational institutions of family, madrasa, and member can be suitably equipped to overcome these challenges. In this series of presentations are conversations from various personalities of our community whose lives have touched many of us and shaped the Khoja Shia Ishnashri Muslim community. Such conversations are of immense benefits to all in the community to understand our heritage as well as our community history. You will find more information on the challenges and solutions on the Awakening Project of the Khoja Shia Ishnashri Muslim community website and various YouTube presentations. Now I have with me Bashir Versi. Salaam alaikum, Bashir.
Wa alaikum salam, Bhai.
Bashir was born in Tanga, Tanganyika at that time, now Tanzania, on 2nd of July 1938. He moved to Dar es Salaam around 1942, where he obtained his primary and secondary education in government schools. He subsequently went to London, England in 1956 to study law, and he was called to the English bar in 1959. In 1961, he obtained a diploma in international relations from the University of London and subsequently returned to Dar es Salaam to practice law. While in Dar es Salaam, he became the secretary of the Tanganyika Law Society, secretary of Dar es Salaam Cultural Association, and a member of Dar es Salaam Rotary Club. He also participated in the various committees of the Dar es Salaam Jamaat and attended the annual meetings of the Africa Federations held during the Easter holidays. He emigrated to Toronto, Canada in 1974. Welcome again, Bashirbhai. How are you keeping nowadays, Bashirbhai?
I'm keeping well, alhamdulillah, considering my age.
Well, you look very well. I saw you in Toronto, and when we were having a delicious breakfast, you looked well at the time, and you're looking well, alhamdulillah.
And we had a very pleasant meeting and some stimulating discussions. So
always.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Always with you and your crowd. It's always stimulating. And I do look forward to, when I come to Toronto, I do look forward to those breakfast meetings. We have a specific number and we do sort of indulge ourselves with good breakfast and good conversations. And I think that's wonderful. And thank you for joining us at the Awakening Project platform to explore your journey of life and share your experiences. I want to begin by asking, what are you up to now at the moment? I take it you're retired, so just sort of share with us what you're doing at the moment.
Okay, so I retired in 2003 when I attained the age of 65. That was the magic number here, 65 and you're out.
Right.
So I was kicked out the moment I reached 65. I was at that time already secretary of Sajadiya Trust. Sajadiya Trust, as you know, is a charitable organization that does a lot of charity work in India and Pakistan mainly, but in other parts of the world as well. So we have all kinds of activities like building schools, medical clinics, helping the indigent, business loans, and all kinds of stuff. We come in every time there are natural calamities like tsunamis and earthquakes and floods and things. So all that work has been done. We've got some very good people, some very almost like rich people, obviously, who can afford to give out that kind of money for these
Good
projects.
philanthropist, yes.
So it was established in 93, and I have been its secretary until 2002. Last year, when I said to myself, you know what, I've reached that stage now, other people need to step in and take over the responsibilities.
Can I
So-
just come in here? It's very interesting. You were secretary from 1993 to 2022,
Correct.
almost a period of,
Almost 30 years.
yeah. So that's wonderful. So you must have seen this charity grow. Is that the charity where Chacha Pariani used to had it and used to go to India and yeah, okay.
That is correct. That is correct.
That's right. Yeah.
So in that particular charity, we had Chacha Pariani as the executive director,
Mhm.
but it was actually set up by Murtaza Goko with a lot of sort of egging on the part of Chacha Pariani. So the
Right.
two of them put their heads together. They got me involved when it came to the legal aspects of setting up a charity and registering it with the Canada Revenue Agency. So we did all that. What we now have is a charity with its board members that include Sujad Ibrahim,
Yes.
Hussein Ali Bhai,
Mhm.
the current president of the Toronto Jamaat, Rizwan Khalfan, Nazmul Damji,
Yes,
myself,
mhm.
and Muhammad Muraj, who has taken over the position of secretaryship from me. He is a lawyer, and the position of executive director is now being very well looked after by Mohsin Kimji. We've been extremely fortunate to have
Right.
somebody
Wonderful
like
guy.
him.
Wonderful
Yeah,
guy. Yes.
wonderful guy, right?
And you know, you've got a gem of a man there because he's a very good friend of mine. And I mean, I've always found his company very inviting and looks after you very well. I have to say that.
He does indeed.
Yeah. So tell me, what is your role now vis-a-vis this particular charity? Are you sort of ex officio or anything like that? Any position that you hold?
I'm still a member of the board,
Right.
so
Okay.
I am on the board. I wanted to get out of the board, but I guess their position was that somebody like me with that kind of experience needed to be on the board at least for some time, and I sort of agreed to continue for a while until my body would not let me anymore.
So your mind is active, the body is now becoming a little bit tired. Okay.
Correct.
I just want to now move on. Thank you. That's very interesting. I did not know that that you had that background.
Could I also add something because that's important?
Yes, sure, sure. Go on.
You know the Crescent Village,
Yes,
which
yes,
used to be the Jaffrey Islamic Housing Corporation,
yes.
changed its name to Crescent Village Housing Corporation,
Mm-hmm.
which offers subsidized housing to not very rich people of the community. They pay the rent that is geared to their income. So I sit on the board of that organization as well. And then, and again, I served as secretary from 2006 to almost last year. And again, I gave up. And again, Muhammad Muraj took over from me. And then another organization is the Crescent Village Seniors Housing Corporation that offers subsidized but not rent geared to income housing to some of our seniors. And there's another charity called Crescent Village Trust that looks after all kinds of charitable activities affecting youth, seniors, battered women, and so on and so forth. And again, I sit on the
Oh,
board of that charity as well.
Bashirhbhai, no, thank you very much. Can I ask you a question here? How have these charities come about? Are they community based or they are non-community? You know, when I say community based, I mean, have they emerged from the needs of our community, or was it set up by a non-community institutions? These
Okay.
charities.
Okay.
So what's the background of those charities? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about Crescent Village Housing Corporation,
Mhm.
which came into existence, I think, in 1990s. It's now in its 30 years of existence. So it will be around 1993 at the same time. It's a community organization in the sense that it is run by community members, but it's outside the community in the sense that it is not part of the Jamaat.
See, okay.
However, there's a provision in its clause, the winding up clause, which says that in the event of the organization being wound up, all its assets are going to be transferred to the Shia Ishnashi Jamaat of Toronto, Islamic Jamaat of Toronto. So in that sense, there is that connection as well. Also, one of the requirements we have two classes of members. There are the regular members, and there are what we call the ex officio members. And all the office bearers of the Jamaat are the ex officio board members of Crescent Village Housing Corporation. So there is that connection.
Bashirvai, this is a wonderful model to emulate elsewhere because I'll tell you why. Because many a times one needs to have an independent or autonomous body to specifically cater for that particular need and to be efficient, and yet have to have a good connection somewhere along the line in the event of something happening and the membership sort of not being there, then the asset can be wound up to the community, the founding community, if you like. And that this model is an interesting model, and I think those people who are listening to this conversation may reach out to you, and I hope that you are able to give them advice. But I will certainly mention this particular model to those who are interested in doing some work of this nature where there is a need to be fulfilled and then to be autonomous, but at the same time having a very good connection. And I think this model has worked very well, I take it, Bashirbhai.
It has worked extremely well. As a matter of fact, I was going to say that in the year 2012, we were awarded what they call the Award of Excellence by the Ontario Not-for-Profit Housing Corporation, whose members are all non-profit housing providers, of whom there are about 750. So of the 750 housing providers in 2012, we were considered to be the excellent providers. And again, last year, 2022, we were given this award once more.
So would I be allowed to say that this is the Koja efficiency at its best?
Absolutely, without being too modest about it.
Good. So I want to now move forward. Bashirbhai, thank you very much. That's very enlightening what you just sort of shared with us. You were born in Dar es Salaam and spent
Tanga.
almost,
Born in Tanga.
yeah, this is the fourth time you've corrected me. Tanga. You were born in Tanga, but obviously you moved to Dar es Salaam fairly sort of at an early sort of part of your life and spent almost 36 years, I take it, in Dar es Salaam now.
Right.
Almost, yeah. And 49 years in Toronto. At the outset, I just want to sort of ask you this question. I mean, you lived considerable part of your life in East Africa, say Dar es Salaam, and considerable part of your life in Toronto. So you've tested both ethos, environment. Any comparison thought that comes to your mind? I mean, I just sort of an overview, not details, but just the overview. What is that? What's that thought that comes in your mind between the two environment?
Okay, obviously, totally different, completely different. You have a completely different way of life living in Dar es Salaam and a totally different way of life living in Canada or Toronto. In East Africa, you have strong community connections. The good thing about East African life was that because we were brought up and studied in government schools where we had people of different religious backgrounds, that we built up good relationship with Hindu friends and Sunnis and all the others. So that was a good part of it. Also, you were in your sort of growing up stage, and therefore the focus of your life is completely different. When you come to a place like Toronto, when you're already a mature individual with family and children, with a different lifestyle, then the whole sort of approach to life changes. It's a totally different thing.
And presumably the life you found that the life in the West on the Canada was very much more faster than
Yes.
the serene life sort of Dar es Salaam,
Yes,
or
definitely.
serene life, yeah. Okay, so talk to us about your childhood and your primary sort of schooling years, and generally your life. Maybe if you can remember something of Tanga or not, then in Dar es Salaam, just sort of share with us what was sort of your childhood like in and your primary schooling in Dar es Salaam.
Yeah. As far as Tanga is concerned, I don't remember very much. I do remember the voyage that we made from Tanga to Dar es Salaam. It was
How did
in a
you come?
small,
How did you come from Tanga to Dar es Salaam?
by dhow. This
Really?
was a little sort of dingy little ship, if you can call it a ship.
What was
It
the
turned
journey
out to
like?
be,
If whatever you can remember, what was it like?
that one I cannot forget. I still can picture the huge waves that were throwing us from one place to another. And I always credit my sea legs to this particular journey that I undertook. It was unbelievable, and it is etched in my mind. It just
Right.
cannot go away. Quite an experience. Anyway, so that sort of left Tanga behind and started new life in Dar es Salaam. Initially, I was enrolled at the madrasa school that in those days also offered secular education. Wasn't terribly happy about it, made all kinds of inquiries and went ahead, just enrolled myself at this Jangwani or Mtendeni primary school without even my parents knowing that I'd done that. And when I disclosed the information to them, needless to say, they were not terribly pleased.
They have to pay
Anyway,
the fees as well.
that's right, exactly. And that's why I needed to tell them.
Yeah. So what was it? What was it? So what can you remember of early childhood? Anything that you can remember?
Um,
What was Mtendeni school like?
Tanzania, the quality of education was very good. We learned Gujarati there a lot. We learned a lot about kavitas, and I still have recollection of some of them. Um, you know, like there was this story about Taskar Khatar Padwa Gaya Vanikne Dwar Taha Beat Tuti Padi Chor Dabaya Char Vanik Kahe Kaliyatano.
I remember
So,
that.
so that one, like the other one was about Bite Zule Chetalwar, Bapuji Keri Bite Zule Re, Mara Bapuji Ne Bahen, Bebe Kumaria, Beba Cheparia Chepa.
આ
And
બધી કવિતા તમે શું કહેવાય આપણે યાદ કરતા હતા કે પછી
no, again, those are the things that sort of created impression, and they were sort of beautifully written. And I've always had admiration for something that is nicely expressed.
Okay.
I mean, there is, for instance, there's an example of when I was doing the secondary education for my final year, we did Macbeth, the Shakespearean play Macbeth. And at the office here, I had one of the senior partners who sat next to me, and he asked me the question, did you do any Shakespeare? I said, yes, I did. He said, which one? I said, Macbeth. And so he started off with tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, and he stopped. And I continued, and I went on till the end. And he was looking at me with wide open eyes. And I said, my God, you still remember?
So where was this secondary education that
The secondary education would be at what is now called the Azania Secondary School.
Azania, yeah. So there were about 3 or 4 very sort of high standard school in Dar es Salaam. One of them was Azania, yeah. So you had your schooling there. I presume that at that time, British education, the education was controlled by the British colonial.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the curriculum was good. The extracurricular activities were also good.
Right.
So you had cricket clubs, you had debating clubs, you had dramatic clubs, and so on and so forth. Cricket was not my strong point, but debate certainly, dramatic certainly, and I was heavily involved in these two activities.
All right. Okay. Do you remember anything significant that has shaped your life that occurred maybe in the childhood, which involved your parents in any way, where you felt that there was something that is etched in your mind, something very significant?
Yeah, I always remember my parents as with very high esteem, because they were always very upright people, strict disciplinarians, very loving, very caring. But at the same time, they had their own limitations, in the sense that I came from a huge family, a baker's dozen actually, 13 siblings.
13.
So I had 13.
1-3.
1-3.
Right. Okay.
So there you go. They had their responsibilities looking after all of us, and providing for food at the table.
Absolutely.
So really, you don't blame them if they could not give you enough of their time, because all of it was really spent on looking after us and providing for us.
Right. So basically, I mean, you then began to share that responsibility also at a very early stage in your childhood, yeah? Okay.
Correct.
Right. So you completed your primary and secondary sort of education, and then opted to study law abroad. Why law?
Okay. Can I sort of divert a little here, and then you can
Please do.
Okay. I had this why law, firstly, because I always believed that I was very argumentative from childhood. I used to argue things.
You still are, I think.
Anybody said one thing, I would say another. I always believed that there were two sides to an argument. I never believed that there was something called the absolute truth, because you could always qualify things. So I had this particular nature about being argumentative, being not accepting what was given to me and questioning. I was also heavily involved in that debating society, where again, the skills sort of arguing developed. There was this friend of mine called Naren Patel, who was sitting just next to me, and he was going to England for medicine. And we always had arguments about going for medicine and law. Just to mention very quickly as a diversion, Naren Patel now is Lord Patel in London, England. Naren was knighted by the Queen in 92, was made a baron in 97, was awarded the highest second honor of second of England, first of Scotland, the Order of the Thistle, which is second only to the Order of the Garter, which Winston Churchill had. World-renowned OBG, obstetrician and gynecologist.
Right. So are you still in touch, or is he passed away, or still there?
No. He's still very much alive. In fact, he was given an audience by King Charles, at his coronation. So we're not in touch in the sense that we are exchanging correspondence and things, but I keep on getting information about him from him. So there was one time we wanted to call him as our guest for our Dar reunion, which we used to organize every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up the phone and I called, somebody gave me his number and said, Naren, this is Bashir here. Oh my God, Bashir, a voice from the past. He was so
Delighted,
welcoming.
yeah.
He said, let's go for lunch. Are you here? And so forth. And then he gave me his 3 or 4 numbers, one of his cottage in Edinburgh somewhere, or Glasgow, I think he was, one in London, one of his House of Lords address, and so on. And then I told him, I said, this was the intention I was calling him for, that we wanted him to come as our guest. And he said, well, obviously he could not make it. So I said, why don't you do this? We're also printing a souvenir publication of this event. Would you mind sending me your CV, curriculum vitae? And he did, and it was about a 20-page one. He had lectured on obstetrics and gynecology in every single part of the world.
Really? Well.
Amazing guy. Sorry about that diversion.
No, that's fine. At least we came to know about your friend, Mr. Patel, or Lord Patel now. Interesting. I mean, I've heard of his name, and I think I saw him during the coronation as well. So, I mean, now I know the background. So he's from East Africa then, from Tanganyika.
Yes. Dar es Salaam.
Dar es
In the
Salaam.
same school as Zenia Secondary School.
Right. We might reach out to him one of these days then. We are from the same country. Right. So go on.
When you meet him, say hi for me.
If I get through the door. Right. So why law? So why did you go for law?
So yeah, so sorry. So he was obviously for medicine, and I obviously was for law. And as I said, I thought I was sort of naturally inclined towards law,
Because
given
of law,
my
yeah.
argumentative nature.
So how did you find sort of coming to study law in 56?
Right.
1956. Tell me, were there any Ishnashris there? I take it there was a Ishnashri student at the time. So just reflect and share what you can about when you first came to study law and built up presumably relationship with other Ishnashri students who were also pursuing higher education at the time. What can you remember of that?
Yeah.
And did you participate in Ishnashri Union?
Yeah. Okay. So when I first went there, Abdul Rasulaka Shuli
Yes.
was the president of the World Federation, and also then became judge of the Nairobi Court of Appeal.
Right.
You must know him, Abdul Rasulaka.
Yes, I heard of his. I think he passed away.
Yes, he did.
Yes,
he did.
yeah. I've heard of. He wasn't the president of the World Federation. I think he was the president of the Jamaat, wasn't it? Or was it Africa Federation?
I thought it was World Federation because at one point they came to my place with Haider Haji, who was then his vice president.
I see. Okay, I can't recall it, but anyway, we'll check it out.
Yes, I'm pretty certain about that.
Right.
So yeah, so he was there. He was again reading for the bar. Hussein Nathu, who was president of the London Jamaat,
right, who subsequently became the president of London Jamaat. Yeah.
Hussein Nathu, who also passed away. I believe Anwar Rajpar was also there at that time.
Yeah.
I think Muhammad Pirbhai came later on because we'd gone to the airport to receive him.
Right.
There was, I think also later on, Shuli's younger brother, Murtaza Laka, joined us, but he was later on. I'm not sure. I think Bashir Ratansi was there. Maybe there were others, but there was quite a community that was already there. I think the Jiwa family were there because every time we had occasions like the 10th Ashura, we would go to their house up in the north, Barnet. Is it
Barnet, that's right, yeah.
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 That's where they had their house, and they would have their Ashura Majalises there. We were the ones who actually set up the Jamaat. We wrote the first constitution, Murtaza Laka, myself, Bashir Chatu was also there. I don't think Shuli was very much involved in the writing of the constitution, but Hussein Nathu certainly was. So we all sort of put our heads together and came up with something. And
Right.
I think called it the International Union of East Africa or something.
Yes, yes. Okay. So you had a sort of comfortable sort of group of people that you I mean, you could relate to and engage with. Yeah. So when you finished law, there is an expression they call it "call to the
Bar.
to the English bar." What does that mean, and what does that entail?
Okay, that's it's a very English expression, kind of. They call it even the term of art, in the sense that they had this little, when you go to the court, so you have the big chair where the judge is sitting, and then the lower one would have the clerk of the court and other administrative officers, and then there would be another little space there, and there would be a bar behind which all the spectators sat.
Right.
And if you wanted to argue a case before the judge, you had to go up to the bar to do it. And only people who were called to the bar could argue before the judge. So all barristers were called to the bar,
Right.
and were able to argue because they could go up to the bar and plead.
So these are, would you say they were privileged people when they were called to the bar, because they were then allowed to argue the case in front of the judge?
In their environment, they certainly were.
Yes. All right. Okay. So you were one of them who were called to the bar. So then you came to Dar es Salaam. Yeah.
The actual ceremony actually
Okay.
was conducted by each inn of court of which you were a member. So there were 4 inns of court: the Lincoln's Inn, Middle Temple, something else, and something else. I forget now.
So which one did you go?
I belong to Lincoln's Inn.
Lincoln's Inn. Okay.
So it had this fame of being the inn of Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi and all these other very famous people. Obviously, you were nowhere near them, but at least we belonged to the same institution, which you could claim.
So you walk the same space that they did.
and the ceremony involved the benchers, who were really the board members of the particular inn, calling you over and giving you the certificate that you earned as a lawyer. The benchers one of the benchers always included a member of the royal family, and our royal family bencher was Princess Margaret. Really? And on that particular occasion, when I was called to the bar, she was there.
Okay. Right. And did she did she have a chat with you or something?
No.
Okay, she was there.
She was at a safe distance away.
Right. Okay. So having called to the bar, then obviously you can now practice law and also represent clients and plead or whatever in front of the judge. But you went to Dar es Salaam, so you began to practice law in Dar es Salaam when you went back.
Correct.
That was in 1961, I take it, wasn't it?
Correct.
Right,
So between 1959 and 61, in that 2-year gap, I did this diploma in international relations.
Right. I just want to make a preamble. Bashir, before you answer, I just want to make a preamble. At that time, Tanganyika was in transition from colony to independence, 1961.
Correct. In 61 December, right, Tanganyika became independent.
Independent, yeah. So there was there was this transition from colony to the independence. So particularly what I would you share, what was the practicing of law like in Dar es Salaam during this transition? Give us some sense of law and justice in the newly independent country like Tanganyika, which subsequently became Tanzania, following Zanzibar revolution. Now, you were practicing law from 1961 to 1974, and Zanzibar revolution occurred in 1964. So give us a sense of how the community felt after the revolution. What was the rule of law like in the independent country like Tanzania? Give us a sense of how you practiced law and how you felt about it.
Yeah, as far as the practice of the law was concerned, from 1961 onwards, there was basically no change at all. We still had Chief Justice, I think it was Charles Wyndham from England. He was then succeeded by another Chief Justice, Georges, from the Guyanas. And it was much, much later that we got a local Tanzanian Chief Justice, Saidi, who then became the Chief Justice of Tanzania. The practice was in the English language, nothing had changed. And I think until the time I left, there was this gradual thing that was happening in the lower courts, where they were expecting you to practice in Kiswahili, but there wasn't really much of it until the time that I left. So really, things hadn't really changed.
All right. Okay. What about
a lot of change occurred after I left. Thank God.
Yeah. But when Zanzibar revolution occurred in Zanzibar, I mean, can you share any sense of trepidation within the community? Was there something like that? It must have shaken the confidence of the community at the time. Can you remember anything that stick to your mind?
From what I recall, it was a pretty dramatic event, pretty consequential in the sense that a lot of people were affected. I mean, those who lived in Zanzibar lost everything.
That's right. Yeah.
Even in some cases, their lives. And obviously, almost every one of us had relatives in Zanzibar who were affected in one way or another. What most of the people in Dar es Salaam could do was to offer assistance, accommodation when they came in. But people were terribly shaken. I think their faith in East Africa and the future that held for them was really broken, in the sense that people were now saying, oh my God, what if this kind of thing happened in Dar es Salaam? And then either before or after, there was this, what is this called? Nationalization. I think around 1964, that happened in Tanganyika itself. Properties were being confiscated by the government. The businesses were being closed down. Parastatals were being set up, so that a lot of people who had already established businesses were now being affected. And again, a lot of trepidation within the community, a lot of feeling that really there was no future in this part of the world for people of Asian background. And with Africanization, while some people justified it, as far as I was concerned, I always called it racism, African racism now towards the Asians. But there you go, they had to give priority to their people, but we were affected by it, and therefore we were quite legitimate in complaining about it.
But even then, I think there was some sense of understanding that they did not have the full measure of their freedom, and therefore they were let down quite a lot. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So in your CV, which you sent to me, you mentioned that you attended various committee meetings of Dar es Salaam Jamaat, as well as Africa Federation meetings. Now, obviously, that was a long time ago, so I don't expect you you to have the details of it. But what I want to, I mean, as you know, Bashirbhai, I'm writing the second part of the book. I've done one book on the Khoja Shia Ishnashis of East Africa from 1860 to 1960. And I'm now writing 1960 to 2022. And so it would be interesting if you can recall any challenges that we're facing our community in East Africa that comes to your mind, you know, when you were sitting in the committee meeting or when you attended the Africa Federation meeting, what were the sort of substantial challenges that were being discussed in your time or in your time that you were attending these leadership meetings? If you can recall any sort of challenges that comes to mind here.
Now, when it comes to the committee meetings of Dar es Salaam Jamaat, I really have no recollection, but I do have one recollection which was captured, I think, by Hassan by Jafar in his book on the Khojas. And that had to do with Uganda citizens or our Uganda community members not getting the Uganda citizenship. And at that time, this matter came up and it was discussed. And I guess I was probably the only lawyer attending that particular meeting. So they said, okay, would you mind going there and investigating the situation and see if there's a solution to it? And I did. I went there. I stayed with Hussein Barwani in Kampala.
That's Asghar Barwani's brother, Marhum Asghar Barwani's brother?
Correct. Correct. I think the leaders at that time were the Ramjis and the Jamals.
Right.
Ghulam Ali, Jamal, and again, very rich
Uganda. Substantial family, yeah.
Right. So we had meetings with a number of people who were affected by this. According to the Ugandan citizenship law, they were entitled to their citizenship, but the minister in charge was not issuing certificates to them, despite proper applications being made. So I went over there, looked into the numbers, saw how many people were affected. I was also very fortunate in having contacts that I built up during my stay in London as a student, because we were all staying at East Africa House in London. And Shafiq Rain was then East African Community Minister representing Uganda, was also living there. Anil Clark, there was another guy who was, I think, Obote's minister, who was probably killed. I think. I hope I'm not mixing up with somebody else. And then somebody else introduced me to Narendra Patel, who was a lawyer and a speaker of the Uganda Parliament.
Right.
So I was very lucky to get those kinds of contacts, and I was able to sort of meet with them and talk to them and discuss the issues. And we all came up with a solution, which was that we needed to go to the court and ask for what is called a writ of mandamus. In other words, that writ would mandate the minister to issue certificates because he was not doing his job. Now, obviously, a very serious action to take, because you're now sort of wading into the political world of the unknown.
Right.
Went with that kind of solution with the Jamaat, and they were all terribly scared. And the expression they used was, Ismaili community loko sukareche. Obviously, I had no idea. Apre eu kem na kariye ke saap bhi mare and lakdi bhi na tute. Ato lakdi to todwani wat che.
And we did not want to risk going beyond, we could not understand what's going to happen to us. Yeah, okay.
actually you could really understand their fears. I mean,
Yeah.
these are just regular, ordinary people who
Sure.
wanted to live their regular, ordinary lives
Life. That's
without
right.
getting involved in these kinds of things.
Mm.
Anyway, history took care of everything.
Yeah.
Obote got overthrown. Idi Amin came into power. And there's an interesting twist to this one as well, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I happened to be in, this was in 1962, August of time. I happened to be in Kampala representing the Tanganyika Law Society. We were all planning a Commonwealth Law Conference in Kampala. So representatives of the three law societies were there, including me as secretary of the Law Society Tanganyika. The night before we were leaving, Idi Amin had held a reception for all the representatives. And we all went up there and met with him and talked to him. And I talked to him in Kiswahili, and I had my Tanzanian shirt and so on. And, his remark was, you Mwindi, wewe Mwindi, wewe mbona unaongea Kiswahili kizuri? You Indian, how come you speak Swahili so well?
Swahili, yes. So, yeah.
So the next day, I'm boarding a plane from Kampala to go to Dar es Salaam, and I'm handed a copy of the Daily Nation, and big headlines: Amin gives 90 days to Asians to quit.
That was the end of everything then. So he used a powerful axe. Right. So can you remember anything else? That's interesting, very interesting story. Anything else that you can remember, or?
I think that was really the main thing, because it was happening in tense times.
Right.
And every time you have a situation like that where there's tension involved, somehow the mind becomes even more active and stores that information. Everything that happens regularly sort of just passes by and it becomes a vague memory.
That's right. But here, I think you actually, because you experienced going there, talking to people, that has remained in your, sort of etched in your mind. Yeah. But it's interesting how, you put it very well, how ordinary people of our community, how they were affected, and how they felt, sort of, in a way, that their position may become much more riskier as political events unfold itself in East Africa, and they were obviously wanting some stability, if not in East Africa, somewhere else. And they did not want to lose everything at the same time. So they were also concerned how to react and how to act. And so guidance and the leadership was absolutely necessary at the time. So you then came to Canada in 1974, Bashirbai. What was your first impression? Or what stuck to your mind as something unique when you came to a Western country like Canada, in terms of societal values and functioning, compared to where you were previously, where you read this big headline, Amin gives 90 days to the Asians. So you had landed in Canada in 1974. Give me your first impression.
Yeah, well, the very first impression was how cold it was, even in October. In fact, we were having snowfalls even in October on those days. I guess climate change has changed things over now. So you now have to wait until November or even December, and sometimes even January before you get a big snowfall. In those days, as I was searching for a job, I know I had to wade through knee-deep snow to go from one place to another for interviews. So that was one of the main things. In terms of general society, Western society, didn't really make much difference to me. I had already lived in London, England for 5 years. So I was quite familiar with that kind of society. However, when it came to my wife and my children, of course, for them, it was a huge huge change. Plus, in those days, we had these strict exchange control regulations. So even if you had some money in East Africa, you could not bring any with you, and really you had to start earning a living right away.
Okay.
And this is where your wife becomes your strong supporter and partner by
So-
supporting you in getting a second job and a second earning for the family.
So how did
Children.
you develop your professional career coming to Canada? Well, you sort of looked for a job as a lawyer or something else?
No, it's this is another good point that you're making. When I came here, they refused to recognize my qualification.
All right.
So I was not able to practice law as a lawyer. So I had to take a lower position. But when you are in a state that I was in, when I was actually, I should also mention, when we came here, we stayed with my sister and brother-in-law, my sister Fakria, and brother-in-law Majid Sachadina,
All right. Okay.
who were kind and generous enough to house us for 3 months, actually, October, November, December. Both of us, my wife and I, looked for jobs. We just could not get it. Nothing was coming our way. And come January 1975, offers started pouring in for both her and me. And we decided we'd stayed with them enough and we had to move. So we moved over to our own apartment where we stayed for 5 years. I got actually offer for 3 jobs, I think. One was to be an editor of one of these law publishers, which did not really appeal to me. I don't remember the second one. The third one to be a law clerk in a 2-man law firm. Oh no, there were 2. Yeah, actually there were 2 from 2 law firms, both to be law clerks. One from an Italian firm, I forget the name, and the second one from a Jewish firm. So the Jewish firm offer was attractive in the sense that they were offering me a car, which they would pay for, maintenance, gas, everything, if I obtained Canadian driving license by the 1st of January. So that was another task, because obviously you guys, we drive on the right side of the of the road, and we say you drive on the wrong side of left side of the
Left side, not wrong. Okay, left side.
not the wrong side, the left side.
Yeah.
I just put in as a jest, kind
I know,
of.
I know.
But so that was another challenge.
You know, we also say that they drive wrong side of the.
But when you really think about it, we
Yeah.
drive on the right side.
Yeah, absolutely. So our sort of expression don't matter too much, but yours do. So yeah,
Okay, so
so you develop your professional career, began to sort of develop your career like that, yeah?
so I
Go on.
had to work as a law clerk, and I did for this 2-man Jewish law firm. And I think after working for him for about a year or so, I kept on being on the lookout for larger law firms because I thought I had better opportunities there. And one of the law firms, which is Fraser and Beatty, I seem to have some kind of affinity for the name Fraser because I was a partner of the law firm in Tanzania called Fraser, Murray, Roden and Company. Over here, I joined after a year and a half with this 2-man law firm, Fraser and Beatty, which was at that time, I think, about 150, 200-man law firm. The difference in practice between Tanzania and Canada was that in Tanzania, you were all over the place. You were in a criminal court one day, you were in a civil court another day, you did divorces another day, you did wills the third day. Over here, you were compartmentalized. So my area of practice, they told me, would be real estate. Now, this was after I joined the 150, 200-man law firm. The two-man law firm was good in a way that the practice there was like Tanzania. Anywhere, everywhere, do whatever came along the way kind of thing. So these guys, the salary at that time, I think, was $125 a week with this two-man law firm. And when the offer came from the larger firm, $200 a week. So it was a substantial difference there. So I went up to the boss in the two-man law firm, Brian, and I said, Brian, I'm sorry, but I have to give you a notice to leave. I've got this particular offer. You've been good to me. We've worked well. I know you're entitled only to 2 weeks' notice, but tell me, how much notice do you want? He said, will you give me a month? I said, sure, no problem. He said, okay, you've been fair with me. I'm going to be fair with you. From this day on, your salary is $200 a week. So that was kind of nice.
Right.
But
yeah.
But he also told me, he says, I'm not doing this as a favor to you. I'm doing this because I want to keep you here.
Right.
So the day when I left, he sat with me and he said, Bashir, you know my phone number, you know where I am. These large law firms put you in one area and you get tired and bored. The moment you feel that way, just pick up the phone and you're back with me. I said, thanks, Brian. I called him after 10 or 15 years of being with this other law firm. I said, Brian, remember me? Brian said, Bashir, yes, I do. So I said, okay. And the only reason I called him was because we were dealing with $1 million condominium thing. My client was selling, no, his client was selling, my client was purchasing. I was acting for that particular client, and obviously I had to be in touch with him to discuss the various matters. So before I discussed those matters, I sort of started with remember me kind of thing. And yeah, we talked about it. And that was the only time I needed to get in touch with him to talk to him.
Right. So after 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I worked with this law firm, Fraser and Beatty, which changed its name several times to Fraser Milner, Casgrain, Fraser something, and it's now known as Denton's. It's a 500-member law firm now.
It's quite a big one, yeah.
It's got offices in every capital of the world, and it's called Denton's, Denton.
So you mentioned your dear wife just now.
Yes.
Now she has been obviously a supportive pillar to you and you to her.
Absolutely.
Obviously, because you are building new life in Canada. So what family is she from then, your
She's
wife?
from the Hashim family, Mamdali Hashim of Russia. He was originally from Wanza.
Ah, right. So she adapted well in Canada, or she found it difficult initially, or?
Well, there always is initial difficulties, but I must say she adapted herself very well.
And now
Very well.
she doesn't want to go back to Tanganyika or Tanzania.
We've been back, and we've seen the changes that have occurred there.
Right.
And we found that we are fortunate to be living in Canada.
Ah, okay. So now you're a fully fledged Canadian citizens, both of you.
Right.
What about your children? How many have you got?
2 children, Nabila and Abdul. Nabila was 6 when we came here, and Abdul was 2. So there's a difference of 4 years between them. Fortunately, alhamdulillah, they've both done well. Nabila got her accountancy degree and is now with Revenue Canada as a senior auditor. She joined, this was her only job. This was her first job, and she's been with them for what now? Almost 25, 30 years.
Right. Okay.
Abdul, my son, did his BA degree and then something on employment. I forget now, but he first joined another firm on the human relations department. Then went to Royal Bank of Canada and is now a personal financial planner.
All right.
And is very happy with
Giving
it.
advice on financial planning.
Right.
Right. Unfortunately or fortunately, they did not pursue law.
No, no.
Now, Bashirbhai, I want to come to our community, Khoja Shia Ishnashris in Toronto. Share with us the state of the community in 1974 when you came in. I mean, what was it like? Presumably, there were no formal institutions like Jamaat at the time. So, tell us the dynamics at that time of our community people or members. Yeah.
So in 1972, when we landed 1st of October, the community was already in existence.
You landed in 1974, right?
74, 1st of October.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The community then was already in existence. From the information I got, it was Dr. Abdulaziz Sachedina who actually founded the Toronto Jamaat. He was in charge, he set it all up. He acted as the resident alim there, performed all the religious ceremonies and so forth. And basically, he really carried the community on his shoulder. And I think really the Toronto community was extremely lucky to have somebody like him, somebody of international renown, somebody whose name appears in one of the top 100 Shia scholars of the world, on the same lines as Ayatollah Sistani and the editor-in-chief of the study Quran, Hossein Nasser, Sheikh Sayyid Hossein Nasser.
Yes.
So somebody like that at that level who was really helping the Toronto Jamaat perform its religious ceremonies and stuff.
Right. So he assisted in the functioning of the Jamaat in an extremely powerful way, as you're putting it.
Absolutely, yes, yes. So, okay. So you had this 1972, then the Uganda exodus.
Yeah.
Which occurred in August 1972. They were given 90 days, so they had to sort of leave by that time. And again, I wasn't here, but from what I understand, the community played a major role in resettling these Uganda refugees. So meeting with them, finding accommodations for them, taking them out, teaching them the way to operate the transportation system, the banking system, the getting of their various official papers like social insurance numbers and so on. So they really performed a major role. I know Salim Sachedina was one of those individuals who was heavily involved in this.
In resettling the Ugandan community members who were coming, yeah?
Yes. So yeah, so these were the people who were doing all that. Now, in terms of our gatherings, we were meeting at Liaquat Virgis warehouse. I think it was in Mississauga somewhere for high occasions. Anytime.
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
Just for a minute. Was the Jamaat formed by then?
Yes.
Okay.
It was already.
And was the Jamaat a Khoja Shia Ishnashri or Shia Ishnashri?
I believe it was Khoja Shia Ishnashri Union of Toronto.
Oh, at that time. We're talking about 1972, 73, 74, like that, yeah?
Right.
Yeah, carry on, Bashir.
Also, I think it was also already registered as a charity, as a religious organization, religious charity.
Right.
Yeah, so we were meeting for our religious functions at this go down for our high religious functions, Wafat Kushalis, at this go down. But that wasn't the only place. There was another place, 5050 Young Street. which I think was a government building, maybe a library or something, where they would have big halls where we would go. Some of the churches also were kind enough to offer their halls to us for gathering our functions. The last one that I recall was a place, a bowling alley place, which is called the April Lanes, which was located in Kennedy and Lawrence in Scarborough, where we would be holding our majalises. That wasn't a very ideal place. There was a lot of noise that was coming from the rolling of the balls in the alley that was taking place around. So every time you had a Maulana speaking to us, he was always being disturbed by these rolling balls.
So then presumably the present place where we have the Jamaat or the community structure.
Yeah.
Before that, where was the structure? Was it in the same place or different?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow that.
Right. The present structure that we have of our Jamaat, was there a previous structure somewhere else or there?
Yeah. Okay. So the present one is at 9000 Bathurst Street, which is in Vaughan. The previous one was in Bayview Avenue, which was in Thornhill.
Right. Now I just want to stop there. The previous one, what can you remember of that history or whatever? Yeah.
Okay. Actually, before we even come to the previous one, as the population increased, the pressure to have our own space mosque mounted, and there were people like Ali Bai Kaba, there were people like, there was a very senior, elder, respected Mr. Kara of the Kara family. There were a number of people, I forget the names now, I'm not taking all the names, but these are the prominent ones that come to mind. Gulab Sarjan, Muhammad Ali Bai, and others who were looking for, I think Raza Sumar as well, we were all looking for land and collecting funds. But meanwhile, in 1979, we had people, some very rich people from Pakistan who came to settle here in Toronto. People like Murtaza Goko, people like Sujad Ibrahim, Sheni Haji, I think there were one or two others. They set up what they called the Mohammadi Islamic Center, which was again a religious charitable organization, registered themselves. They purchased this land in Bayview, which was the previous mosque where it was set up, which is still there. It's now run by the Iranis. So they purchased that land, they built a mosque. The opening ceremony was performed by the Attorney General of Ontario, Roy McMurtry, with Dr. Aziz Sachadina. The two of them did the opening together. However, the ownership of that mosque was kept by Mohammed Islamic Center. They were generous enough to say to the community, use it. This would be your mosque. It is built for members of the community, but we will tell you how to run it. And that obviously didn't sit well with our community. We always believed in having our own properties and our own institutions, and running things in our own way, which was a major thing. So there was this big dispute that arose. There was the Bayview Mosque was being boycotted, and so on and so forth. A lot of bad blood, but we had some, fortunately, I think we're very, very, very lucky to have people like Chacha Pariani and people like Murtaza Goko, both sensitive, mature, wise individuals who put their heads together and came up with some kind of a solution. I was acting as Chacha's advisor. Chacha and I have worked together for a long, long time with Sajadia Trust. he was executive director. I was secretary for years. As soon as he became president, he got me heavily involved into the community affairs. So he was constantly in consultation with me, and I thank him for doing that because it gave me the opportunity to be of service.
To serve the community, yes.
Right. So things worked out. They were kind enough to not only give the mosque to the community, but they'd also purchased a townhouse as the residence for the resident alim. They transferred that property also to the community, which they didn't have to do, but they did.
Right. So Bashirbhai, when did the word Khoja came out from the constitution, and what is the history behind that? If you can recall, that would be interesting. If you can share that with us, what was the rationale behind all that? Yeah.
Again, I am speaking from memory, so it sometimes plays tricks on you, and you.
That doesn't really matter, but whatever you can share, it would help.
So
if you
from
can.
what I can recall, I think one of the things that the people with MIC wanted was the fact that that the access to the mosque should remain open to all. You also had a lot of people that came from different parts of the world. There were the Iranis, there were the Afghanis, there were the Hyderabadis, and so on and so forth. Not necessarily all Khojas, and that sort of population kept on going up. There was also this argument that I think was being offered by people like Aziz to say that, what you're doing is you're not running a cultural organization here. You're running a religious organization, and it is not right that a religious organization should have that kind of a distinction where you sort of keep it open only for the Khojas of East Africa and not welcome everybody who practices your faith. There was that argument, which I thought was an interesting one. Which of your 12 imams is a Khoja? Which of your payambas is a Khoja? So there were all these kinds of emotional arguments that were put forward. It wasn't an easy decision. I think it probably required several general meetings before people, or at least the majority, was convinced that maybe in this circumstance, in this part of the world, that maybe it was not the right thing to have that kind of distinction in a religious organization. Now, not everybody was convinced. There are still people who strongly believe that we should reintroduce the word Khoja into our institutions.
Right. So the debate still goes on, but
Absolutely.
not in a public way, but at least in a private way, it still goes on.
Correct.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that sharing of.
Now, I apologize to people if I did not express myself well, because these were very high emotion.
I think you expressed it. You expressed the sentiment very well, because if I wanted to know what was the sort of major differences, and I think you expressed what was happening, what was the dynamic there, and I think that's an interesting one, and the debate hasn't sort of moved forward. It's still being debated, and people are still wondering whether retrospectively we made the right decision or not. But anyway,
Correct.
that's
Correct.
another debate.
Right.
But now, Bashirbhai, now subsequently from that property that we had, which Muhammadi Trust gave to the Jamaat, then we moved on to the present structure that we have. Is there anything that you want to share about the evolution from that to this, where you as a legal advisor maybe, and because you have been advising the community from the legal point of view, you want to share something that may interest the audience who are listening to us?
Sure. The community obviously was growing.
Mm.
and it was really growing by leaps and bounds.
Mm.
And really, the Bayview Mosque was not sufficient for our purposes. The biggest problem was parking. It was impossible to get a parking space. Um, you had to go way before the starting time if you wanted to make sure that you got a parking space for your car.
Mm.
Um, so it was an inconvenience. However, again, people are very creative, especially our leaders can be very creative. And one of the creative act on the part of our leaders was we had a Jewish community just north of us who had their center there. And we came up with an arrangement whereby on their high nights, like Saturdays, I think it was, the Shabbat Shalom Shabbat, we would give them our parking space.
Mm.
And on our high days for Jummah prayers, Wafat, Kushalis, they would allow us to use their parking space.
Mm.
So that worked out well. In fact, it worked out so well that the Jews came up with a video which they entitled A Lot to Share. And that said more than just sharing parking spaces. It was a lot to share. We shared parking spaces, we shared even some activities. They would invite us to their places and we would invite them to ours. So there was a lot of cooperation between the two of us, and that worked out well. But as I said, the need kept growing and it started becoming urgent. And then we started looking for another space. And we got this one, 29-acre lot, huge space,
Yeah.
which fitted our purposes quite well. And the way it was designed also was quite nicely and creatively done, because it was not just an Imam Barga and a masjid, but they also had gymnasium, which all these spaces are being so much used today, especially on occasion or during Ramadan, for instance. You would have all kinds of youngsters who spend almost the entire night every day for 30 days making use of those gymnasium, playing soft hockey, badminton, and all kinds of games and involvement. I mean, that is the kind of thing that even makes you feel good, because you then realize that the space is not being wasted. It is being used, and it is being used by your community
And
and the
that provides,
youngsters of the community.
that's right, that provides a sense of community
The belonging.
togetherness. Yeah. So no, that's wonderful. That's nice to know from your point of view how it evolved from that structure to this one. Now, I know you have been a legal advisor to Toronto Jamaat. Am I correct first in saying that you were a legal advisor to Toronto Jamaat? Not officially maybe, but unofficially, they come to you for any legal advice. I know
Yeah.
that has been the case, but perhaps you can say yes or no to that. Uh, the, yeah, go
Okay,
on.
I always hesitated the use of the word legal advice because, strictly speaking, in this part of the world, I was not a lawyer. So every time they talked about legal advice, just call me advisor.
All right.
So
I
so
think if I say advisor, okay,
so so
of
so,
of
so when
special
I said
of special type. So you were a advisor to Toronto Jamaat and Nasimco.
yeah,
Can you share with us what that entailed? Because it gave you an opportunity to serve the community from a different vantage point, where community needed some sort of advice, where you had the skill for it. And so perhaps you can expand on it and share with us what it entailed.
yeah. So when it came to the Toronto Jamaat, for instance, where we had issues that pertain to legal matters like acquiring lands and uh, doing other legal matters, that they would consult with me, but they would also have the lawyers there. But it always helps when you approach a lawyer that you present your case in a way that he understands. So that's where I was involved. There were all kinds of amendments to the Constitution that was being proposed over the years, and they would always consult with me in terms of putting those amendments in the right form, or coming up with arguments as to why it should not be there. There would be issues that would come up at meetings where somebody would say something, and whether it was correct that they should interfere at that point or what. We had the system of speakers that would chair meetings and things, and there would be a number of speakers who would come across certain issues, and again they would come up to me and says, you know, we were conducting this particular meeting and we came across this, and how about this and how about that, and so on. And so I did that for a number of years. Now I must say the current speakers now of course we've got people who themselves are perfectly capable and have the experience to do things on their own, so they don't need advisors like me. But until the time that the need was there, they would consult with me, and I'll be grateful for them doing that, for giving me also the opportunity to be of service. So yeah.
This idea of having a speaker, I think the Toronto Jamaat was the first Jamaat in the world to have that position secured within a constitution. None of the other Jamaats yet have secured, including regional federations and world federations meetings, don't have speakers. Retrospectively, would you say that this position that Toronto Jamaat provided in the constitution, the speaker's position, has served them well?
Okay, let me first mention whose idea it was to have a speaker.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's good.
I think it was Ghulam Sarjan. Ghulam Sarjan was very insistent on having this position, and really, what do you call it, the political thing, consulted with a lot of people trying to convince them to have this position there. I think overall it has served well, in the sense that when you have arguments between membership and the executive, and there's always that kind of tension between the members and the executives about if the acts that the executives do, which is not palatable to the membership, and when a member of the executive sits as the chair of that particular meeting when these things are discussed, I think emotions normally run high. It makes sense to have a sort of a neutral person who is out there, who is able to calm both sides and take an even-handed approach to the issue. So I think in that sense, it has worked very well.
So am I right in saying that the constitution may well, our constitution, be a Jamaat one or regional federation or world federation, it may provide the rights and obligations in a sort of a measured and a justifiable way. But when it comes to the process itself, where if there is not a neutral person conducting the meeting, it is possible that the process may be unjustly used. And that then create all the emotions that you just described. And to make the process just, a need of a speaker is essential. Would you say I have provided an explanation that would concur with you?
I totally concur with you, because you raised such a good point. It's terribly important to have the right person in this particular position. It's got to be a mature person. It's got to have some knowledge about how meetings are conducted. It's got to be aware of the rules. Basically, should know that, what is that book on bylaws and things, at the back of his hands, because so many times people sort of point of order, point of information, point of this, point of that, and you ought to be in a position to say this is not the right time at which you should raise
right, yeah.
and so on. So many of these issues are important, but it just doesn't apply to the speaker. It applies to every person who is holding office.
Yeah,
They all have to be mature. They all have to be knowledgeable. They all have to have some kind of sympathy and empathy for the community, and have that wider view about the interests of the community coming first rather than their own or the individual personal members. So that obviously has to be there.
Right. Yeah, no, a very good point that you have made, Bashir. Right now, that draws me very nicely into you being an advisor to NASIMCO now as a regional federation. And I can recall a World Federation meeting in London in 1988, when at that time the NASIMCO president, what's his name?
Mohsen Kamalia.
Mohsen Kamalia. I think he brought a huge contingent because at that time Marhum Mullah was going to be the president for the next 3 years rather, and so many constitutional amendments had come, and there was obviously a chaotic time in that sense because we weren't sure as an organization where we are going, because we were going to the next century at the time. It was only 12 years to 21st century. And I remember the discussion of a vision for the community, a concept for the community. Now, I think you played a very decisive role, if I can recollect, because you proposed at the appropriate time that we should, that those proposals, there were three major proposals, regional federations, NASIMCO, Africa Federation, and Mefla Murtaza, that you proposed that let's three of us get together. And then, because Mullah was proposing whether we should postpone it or not. And really, it was not the chair's decision here. It was those who actually proposed whether we should withdraw or not. And I think that your proposal was very timely, that 5 or 10 minutes was given for the regional federation representative to come up with something. And I think at that time you came up with the notion of a vision, the concept. Can you sort of how did that arise? What was sort of, because that was a meeting between you three representatives only, and we were sort of outside. So you came up with all these things. So perhaps you can explain why did you come up with the whole notion of vision and concept and all that?
So let me sort of make some preliminary remarks here. I was at this particular meeting at Chacha's behest, Chacha Biryani. Chacha was then vice president of the Jamaat, and he made sure that there were certain people who were there because of the weighty discussions that were going to take place on constitutional amendments. There was that feeling of dissatisfaction that the World Federation was anywhere and everywhere. That if anything happened in Toronto Jamaat, it was there, and anything happened in Dar es Salaam, it was there, and anything happened in, I don't know if the European Jamaat was already in existence at that time, I think it was, that they would be there. So in a sense, there wasn't this feeling of respect on the part of the World Federation of the various institutions, jurisdictional authority. That the idea, therefore, was, and it was a simple concept, but very difficult to put into practice. So if you have things happening at a local level, this was really the jurisdiction of the Jamaat, that they took care of the matter, that the World Federation, somebody doesn't pick up the phone and talk to Mullah, and Mullah suddenly comes as a World Federation and starts getting involved in that issue. So that would be the local jurisdiction. Then there would be the matter of regional jurisdiction. So Africa Federation had its own region in Africa. Things happen in their jurisdiction. It's not the business of the World Federation to poke its nose into what was happening there, that the issue had to be managed by that particular region. And then comes the World Federation with its overview of the world in the interest of the Shia community, that anything that affected everybody, that they would be responsible for, and matters that are referred by local jurisdictions to regional jurisdictions to the World Federation because they can't handle it, to get involved in those things. That was their jurisdiction, not little issues in one place or another and jumping from here and there and opening bank accounts. I think there was some issue about that too in Brampton or somewhere, and then coming up with Brampton Accord or whatever. So simple concept, difficult to put into practice. Again, there was this fear of dictatorship on the part of the World Federation, that everybody was basically beholden to the World Federation and must do as they want, kind of thing. So these were really the ideas, and we said to ourselves, rather than draft a constitution with all kinds of various ideas, there's got to be a concept as to what it is that we need. How is the organization to function? What are the jurisdictional limitations and so on? And that's how we came up with this idea. We submitted the paper. I think I was involved, so was Salim Sachadina, so was Mohsin Kamali, and I think so was Mohammad Durrani.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, when I moved from my house to this apartment, there was a whole lot of stuff that I had with me that I just threw away. And one of the things that I really regretted throwing away was this particular paper. I wish I hadn't, or I wish I had at least read it, so I would have been able to at least intelligently answer your questions. So hopefully I've done the right thing.
No. So what you are saying is that an organization who is about to restructure in any way its constitution must have a concept of where they want to take the organization, and must have a vision where they want to then be, or rather be at in 50 years' time, or 20 years' time, 25 years' time. So needs to consider all the factors and challenges, opportunities, and weigh it up, and then prepare a constitution accordingly, so that it becomes easier for them to achieve the objectives that they've planned at this level.
Absolutely.
So a concept is absolutely necessary as to what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it, and what sort of vision that would entail then. Okay, no, thank you very much. So it gives us an idea of what role you were playing at the Jamaat level and at the regional federation level. So the final two questions, and then we'll end the Bashirbhai. The final one, the penultimate one is, what challenges are there for present leadership that you see from your vantage point of view, and past experiences? Share your thoughts with us, if you can sort of think of any challenges that the present leadership are having, or do you still think that they still have the same challenge that you were having in 1988 of defining in a very clear way the boundary between the Jamaat, the regional federation, and the World Federation? Do you think that you're still having the same sort of challenge, or do you feel that beyond that there are many challenges, and you may want to share any?
Yeah. So society is always on the move. You always have things evolving, and currently things are evolving even faster. From being a purely religious organization, we now have to be an organization that takes care of the needs of its populace. Those needs are housing, education, health, welfare, and with the increasing number of the elderly with their very special needs, these also need to be looked after. So in the form of, for instance, building assisted homes or nursing homes and so forth. So these are really the current challenges. I think being a purely religious organization is not enough. It can't be, it shouldn't be, it doesn't have to be. The community has its needs. Just fulfilling one will not satisfy the community. You've got to fulfill all their needs. And I feel that those are the challenges. Now, I must say about the Toronto Jamaat, they're doing very well. They're doing very well. They have these challenges in mind, and they're doing things about it. There's already plans underway about building housing for the seniors. There was a talk, in fact, as far as the complex itself is concerned, we had seriously given thought to the idea of building assisted living for our seniors. Somehow the finances didn't work out, and the idea from the complex point of view had to be dropped. But I think the leadership cannot avoid this issue. It is getting more and more serious, and it will have to be faced. So I believe that really is a challenge.
Right. No, then in that case, my final question is also answered, because I was going to say, what was the advice that you would want to give to the, because you've comprehensively done it. You said all those challenges, education, housing, assisted living, and all that, obviously require a concerted effort of all the organization, hierarchy organization that we have, the World Federation, the Regional Federation, and the Jamaat. They all have to work together to fundamentally really solve these needs of our community worldwide, because this is not in Toronto only, it's in London, equally applicable in Dar es Salaam, Karachi, Bombay, Madagascar, everywhere. So, no, I think that that's a wonderful positive note to end our conversation. Bashirbhai, thank you so much for sharing and enlightening us with your journey of life so far. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you good health, long life.
I've got to thank you for the opportunity you've given me. Obviously, you have a number of people in your list to interview, and for choosing or opting to have me as one of your interviewees, I'm grateful to you.
Not at all. No, I'm thankful that you have accepted this invitation, because your experiences in Tanzania and Canada provided us, obviously, with a unique vantage point, particularly your experiences as a lawyer. And then, of course, those experiences contributed to the development of our community. So I'm sure our listeners will benefit by your insights, actually, and that you have shared with us. And I have to say that we laughed a lot during our conversation, and I found it enlightening. So thank you very much, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family and give you tawfiqat. Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.